1. Love the person you're with. Near death experiencer Howard Storm. When Jesus told me I had to come back to the world and I was trying to convince him not to send me back, I asked him what would I do if I came back. Before he had a chance to answer, I said, "You know, I am an artist and I would like to build your shrine. I would make this shrine so big and beautiful and bizarre that people would come from all over the world out of curiosity to see what it was about. What they would find was it would be about you. That would make them think about you. That's what I would like to do if I came back." He said, "I would rather you didn't do that." What? People have been building shrines to you forever. There are lots of shrines. Why can't I build a shrine? I would like to build a shrine. You spent so much of your life hiding out in the studio, avoiding people. I would prefer it if you didn't avoid people by building this big shrine. I don't really care about shrines. People like to build shrines. I understand that. It makes them feel good. It does absolutely nothing for me or for God. We don't have any use for them whatsoever. If that's what amuses you, I guess that's what you gotta do. But don't do it for me. Don't deceive yourself into thinking it's something I want or need, because I don't. Okay, you shot down my idea. What's your idea? Love the person you're with. Okay, great, I'll do that. No problem. What do you want me to do? I just told you what I want you to do, love the person you're with. Yeah, but after I do that, what do you really want me to do? No, that is what I want you to do, love the person you're with. I said, "Well, that's simple enough, that's easy, I can do that." "Oh, really? Well, that's what I want you to do. That's enough." And I said, "How is it enough? If you do that, you will change the world." "Oh, you want me to change the world?" "Exactly, that's why I put you in the world in the first place, to change the world." Well, you know, there have been a lot of people who have tried to change the world and that usually turns out pretty badly. I can think of examples like Adolf Hitler, and Joseph Stalin, and Mao Zedong. All of them wanted to change the world and they made it worse. If I go back and try and change the world, why isn't it possible that I could make a lot of terrible mistakes and make the world a worse place? The way I want you to change the world is by loving the person you are with. Wait a minute, that's a contradiction. You want me to change the world, but you just want me to love the person I'm with. Yes, that's the plan, that's the big plan. If you love the person you're with, then that person will go out and love the person they're with, and they will go out and love the person they're with, and it will be like a chain reaction, and love will conquer the world and everyone will love one another. That's God's big plan. It's not going to work. Why won't it work? I love the person I'm with. She walks across the street and gets run over by a truck. Everyone gets angry and upset. Yeah, that happens. But it's really God's plan and nothing is going to stop it. It's going to happen. Even if you had 1,000,000 people, I don't think it's going to happen. There are more than 1,000,000 people in the plan. Well, from what I know of the world, you don't have enough. Actually, we have all the angels in the plan. There are a lot of them. There are more angels than people in the world. There are millions of people. There are all the angels. And there's God. It's inevitable. The plan is going to happen. If that's your plan, I'll do it, but I just don't really see much hope for it. You don't know enough to see how it's going to happen. So, my solution to everything is to love one another. And when I read the Bible and found out that that was written in the Bible is Jesus' commandment, "This is my commandment, that you love one another." That's the program. I have tried to be part of that program. So, I personally have no big plan other than to be loving. The only fly in the ointment was that I thought it was going to be easy, and it turns out to be the hardest thing I've ever done. It sounds so simple, but it's really difficult. It's easy for me to love my mother because she was a really nice woman, a very loving woman. It's not hard to love someone who is really good and really loving. But what do you do with someone who is difficult, or really nasty? Those are hard people to love. And what does it mean to love someone? Sometimes to love someone means you need to incarcerate them. And that's not a lot of fun. Sometimes loving someone means you have to put as much distance between them and you as possible and tell them to never call you. And that's not a lot of fun. Loving people sounds so simple, but it's very difficult. The Golden Rule dramatically illustrated ** researcher Kenneth Ring, PhD. I think this is one of the most remarkable aspects of the near-death experience and one that is not really given the amount of attention that it should. Many people know about the light, they know about the out-of-body experience. The thing that really is, I think, important about the near-death experience in regard to the life review phenomena is that it isn't just a life review. It's a reliving of your life. When people describe the full experience, it's every single act you have done, every single thought you have thought, every single word you have spoken. Suddenly all of this is back with you. You are running through it again and you see and you experience the effects of these acts, these thoughts, and these words on other people. Let me just give you one brief example to illustrate this. I have a friend who, when growing up, was kind of a roughneck. He had a hot temper, he was always getting into scrapes. One day he was driving his truck through the suburb in the town where he lived and he almost hit a pedestrian. And he got very aggravated with the pedestrian, and he was a very big physical guy, still is, and a fight ensued. He punched this guy out and left him unconscious on the pavement, got back into his truck, and rode off. 15 years later, my friend has a near-death experience. And during the near-death experience, he has a life review. In his life review, this particular scene of the fight takes place again. And he said that, as many people do, he experienced this from a dual aspect. There was a part of him that was almost as if he were high up in a building looking out a window and seeing the fight below. But at the same time, he was observing the fight like a spectator, he saw himself in the fight. Except this time, he found himself in the role of the other person. And he felt all 32 blows that he had rained on this person 15 years ago now being inflicted upon himself. He felt his teeth cracking. He felt the blood in his teeth. He felt everything that this other person must have felt at that particular time. There was a complete role reversal, an empathic life review experience. This is the sort of thing that many people report. And when they report these kinds of experiences, they realize that in our life, we are the very people that we hurt, we are the very people that we help to feel good. We experience these actions as though done to ourselves in the life review. So when people start talking about the golden rule in the context of the near-death experience, the golden rule is not just a precept for moral conduct, it's the way it works. And you experience this during the life review. You learn that lesson in a very forcible way as a result of going through this kind of experience. And that's why, when people have NDEs, they change as much as they do. If you can even imagine what it must be like to go through your entire life and see everything you've ever done, without judgment, but from a kind of almost omniscient point of view with regard to the effects of those actions, and you see what your actions do to other people, it's a heavy kind of lesson. It's something that stays with you, and informs your conduct for the time after your near-death experience. So it does give us a lot to think about, and that's why I say in my book, Lessons from the Light, the near-death experience isn't given just to those who have the experience, it's given to all of us to learn from, because all of us can profit from the lessons near-death experiences learn in the course of a life review or other aspects of their experience. We can grow from these lessons. We can apply these lessons into our daily lives. Operation Chop Chop near-death experiencer Tom Sawyer. When I was around 8 years old, my father told me to mow the lawn and cut the weeds in the yard. We had a cottage in the back and a double house in the front. Aunt Gay, my mother's sister, lived in the cottage out back. Aunt Gay was a very delightful person, she was a friend of mine as well as my aunt. She was always fun to be with. All the kids thought she was a cool person to know. She had described to me her plans for some wildflowers that grew on little vines in the backyard. Leave them alone now, Tom, she said, and as soon as they blossom we'll make tiaras for all the girls, and flower necklaces for some of the guys. Then everybody could pitch in, and she'd teach them how to weave such things. That was typical of her. We were looking forward to that. However, my father told me to mow the lawn and cut the weeds. Now, I had several choices. I could explain to my father that Aunt Gay wanted the weeds left to grow in this particular area. If he said to cut them all, I could have explained to Aunt Gay that father had just told me to mow the lawn and to cut that patch of weeds. I could ask if she wanted to make her request to my father. Or, I could methodically and deliberately go ahead and mow the yard and cut the weeds. I did that. Well, worse than that, I even came up with a name for the job. I called it Operation Chop Chop. I deliberately decided to be bad, to be malicious. And I went ahead, feeling the authority that my father gave me when he told me to cut the grass and the weeds. I thought, wow, I got away with it, I did it. And if Aunt Gay ever says anything, I'll just tell her father told me to do it. Or if father asks me, I'll say, well, that's what you told me to do. And I would be vindicated. It would be okay, it would be a perfect Operation Chop Chop. End of story. My Aunt Gay never said a word to me, nothing was ever mentioned, I got away with it totally. Guess what? I not only relived it in my life review, but I relived every exact thought and attitude, even the air temperature and things that I couldn't have possibly measured when I was 8 years old. For example, I wasn't aware of how many mosquitoes were in the area. In the life review, I could have counted the mosquitoes. Everything was more accurate than could possibly be perceived in the original event. I not only re-experienced my 8-year-old attitude and the kind of excitement and joy of getting away with something, but I was also observing this entire event as a 33-year-old adult, with the wisdom and philosophy I was able to attain by that time. But it was more than that. I also experienced it exactly as though I was Aunt Gay, several days after the weeds had been cut, when she walked out the back door. I knew the series of thoughts that bounced back and forth in her mind. Oh my goodness, what has happened? Oh well, he must have forgotten. But he couldn't have forgotten, everyone was looking forward to, oh no, knock it off. Tommy is. He's never done anything like that. I love him so. Oh, come on, cut it out. Gee, it was so important. He had to know. He couldn't have known. Back and forth, between thinking of the possibility, and saying to herself, well, it is possible. No, Tommy isn't like that. It doesn't matter anyway, I love him. I'll never mention it. God forbid, if he did forget and I remind him, that will hurt his feelings. But I think that he did, though. Should I confront him with it and just ask him? Thought pattern after thought pattern. What I'm telling you is, I was in my Aunt Gay's body, I was in her eyes, I was in her emotions, I was in her unanswered questions. I experienced the disappointment, the humiliation. It was very devastating to me. It changed my attitude as I experienced it. I experienced things that cannot be perceived. I watched me mowing the law from straight above, anywhere from several hundred to a couple of thousand feet, as though I were a camera. I watched all of that. I was able to perceive and feel and know everything about my Aunt Gay regarding our relationship in that general time frame and regarding Operation Chop Chop. In addition, and what is probably more important, spiritually speaking, I was able to observe the scene, absolutely, positively, unconditionally. In other words, not with the horrendous emotional ill feelings that my Aunt Gay experienced, not knowing for sure, and yet being afraid to question for fear that she would inflict some kind of disease, or ill feelings on my part. God forbid, if I did it by accident and her reminder would hurt my feelings. And yet she experienced hurt in losing the flowering weeds, not being able to do the things for all the children she had promised, and constantly questioning whether I could have done it on purpose. I did experience that in this unconditional way, with this unconditional love that is only God's eyes, or the eyes of Jesus Christ, or the light of Jesus, or the light of Buddha enlightened, the spiritual entity. It is that combination that is God unconditionally, not boy, Tom, you sure did a good rip-off, or there, Tom, now do you feel bad enough? Or, you sure were bad. None of that, only as in the eyes of God, simple, pure, scientific observation, complete, totally, non-attachment. No judgmental aspect whatsoever. This is simultaneous with the total devastation I created in my aunt's life. And the arrogance, the snide little thoughts, the bad feelings, and the excitement of what I created in my own life at that young age, that was one event. I wish that I could tell you how it really felt and what the life review is like, but I'll never be able to do it accurately. I'm hoping to give you just a slight inkling of what is available to each and every one of you. Will you be totally devastated by the crap you brought into other people's lives? Or will you be equally enlightened and uplifted by the love and joy that you have shared in other people's lives? Well, guess what? It pretty much averages itself out. You will be responsible for yourself, judging and reliving what you have done to everything and everybody in very far-reaching ways. Very small, seemingly inconsequential things such as the day when I, 9 years old, walked through Seneca Park and loved the appearance of a tree. In my life review, I could experience a bit of what the tree experienced in my loving it, two little photons of love and adoration. It was somewhat like the leaves acknowledging my presence. Can a tree experience that? Yes, it can. Don't go kicking trees anymore. You do have that effect on plants. You do have an effect on animals. You do have an effect on the universe. And in your life review, you'll be the universe and experience yourself in what you call your lifetime and how it affects the universe. In your life review, you'll be yourself absolutely, in every aspect of time, in every event, in the overall scheme of things in your lifetime. Your life. The little bugs on your eyelids that some of you don't even know exist. That's an interrelationship, you with yourself, and these little entities that are living and surviving on your eyelids. When you waved a loving goodbye to a good friend the other day, did you affect the clouds up above? Did you actually affect them? Do a butterfly's wings in China affect the weather here? You better believe they do. You can learn all of that in a life review. As this takes place, you have total knowledge. You have the ability to be a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a psychoanalyst, and much more. You are your own spiritual teacher, maybe for the first and only time in your life. You are simultaneously the student and the teacher. My life review was part of this experience also. It was absolutely, positively, everything basically from the first breath of life right through the accident. It was everything. During this life review, I experienced what I can only describe as, in the eyes of Jesus Christ. Meaning, I watched and observed this entire event as if I were in the eyes of Jesus Christ. Which means unconditionally. It does not mean, Tom, by being Christ-like, you don't hit people, you love people. No to that. Nor was it, wow, God has really made you a very good specimen and your reflexes are superior. You did an excellent job in beating that man up. No to that either. It's not judgmental or negative. I can't describe it other than with the unconditional love of Christ, the Christ who has absolute unconditional love. You will have the experience of observing something without any emotion or righteousness, or judgmental attachments. You will be able to observe history only as history, without the emotional attachments to the facts and figures. I want to also say that there were experiences of absolute love and joy.